All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going back to the 19th century to look at another interesting excerpt you've brought for us.
Yeah, and this time we're heading into the world of William Makepeace Thackeray's Vanity Fair, specifically looking at those early interactions between Joe Sedley and Rebecca Sharp.
Okay, so it's like a courtship.
Exactly, a budding romance in Victorian England. But more than that, it's a real study in those early social dynamics and how people kind of size each other up and the strategies they employ when they're first starting to get to know each other, especially with a romantic interest.
So what's our mission for this deep dive today?
Well, I think we need to look beyond just the surface of those initial interactions and see if we can unpack, what's Rebecca's game plan here? What are the strategies she's using to try to win Joe over? And how is Joe responding to this? Is he falling for it? Is he clueless what's going on in his head?
Right, so Joe Sedlin, give us a little background on this guy.
Well, Joe Sedley, he's a bit of a, good-natured fellow, maybe a little bit naive,
Oh,
a bit
yeah.
sheltered, kind of comes across as a bit of a simpleton sometimes. But he's definitely smitten with Rebecca Sharp.
And Rebecca Sharp is not a simpleton.
No, not at all. I mean, she's very clever, very observant. She's got her own agenda.
I like her already.
Yeah, she's a fascinating character to follow because she really understands how to work a room, and she's definitely ambitious about improving her station in life.
And at this point in the story, she's connected to the Sedley family somehow, right? So she's in close proximity to Joe, which kind of sets the stage for all of this.
Right, exactly. I mean, she's brought into the Sedley household, and that gives her this opportunity to interact with Joe and, kind of set her plan in motion.
So what happens right away when they're suddenly thrust together like this?
Well, you see this really interesting contrast in their reactions, right? So Joe, he seems to panic a little bit. He actually avoids the house for a few days, like he's not quite sure what to do with
Although
himself.
he's overwhelmed.
It's almost like he's intimidated by her or by the situation.
Too much pressure.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't have a lot of experience with women. I mean, who knows? But he's definitely not acting like a smooth operator.
So while he's off, hiding out, doing whatever, what's Rebecca up to?
Well, that's the thing. She doesn't waste any time. She jumps right into, ingratiating herself with the family. She's very respectful towards Mrs. Sedley, showing her gratitude for their hospitality and just enjoying all the social events and outings and everything.
And Joe's name never even comes up.
Nope, not once,
Mm.
which I think is really significant. It's like she's deliberately not mentioning him.
Like she's playing it cool.
Exactly. She's not going to seem too eager or, pip her hand too early. She's letting the situation develop naturally.
Laying the groundwork.
Yeah, establishing herself as, a friend to the family and a welcome guest before she makes any kind of move.
So it's not just that she's being friendly with everyone. She's actually very strategic about how she interacts with each member of the household.
Oh, absolutely. She tailors her approach to each person. And you really see that with Mrs. Sedley, who's a very sentimental woman, right?
What does she do? Lays it on thick.
Well, there are these moments where Rebecca, tears up and talks about love and happiness and all these things that really resonate with Mrs. Sedley. And she ends up seeing Rebecca as this, charming, kind-hearted girl.
So she's playing the emotional card.
Yeah, and it works because Mrs. Sedley is easily swayed by, displays of emotion.
It's like she's disarming her with all this sentimentality.
Exactly. And you have to remember that in that era, displays of emotion, particularly from women, were often seen as, genuine and something to be valued.
So she's really playing into the social expectations of the time.
Right. And it earns her a lot of goodwill and, kind of sets her up as someone who deserves to be protected and cared for.
Now, how about Mr. Sedley? What's her strategy with him? He's a little different from his wife.
Yeah, Mr. Sedley is more of a jovial fellow, loves to tell jokes, and you see Rebecca completely shifting gears with him. She laughs at all his jokes, like really enthusiastically.
She's a good audience.
The best. And the text even mentions that, she does it with cordiality and perseverance, which I love. And of course, Mr. Sedley is eating it up. He's pleased and softened by her attention.
So she's playing to his ego.
Yeah, she's making him feel witty and appreciated, which, who doesn't love that? And it really shows her social intelligence because she understands that different people respond to different things.
Adaptability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's not just using one tactic on everyone. She's figuring out what works for each person and, kind of tailoring her approach accordingly.
But she doesn't stop at the family. She also goes out of her way to be nice to the servants.
Which is really interesting because you wouldn't think that would be essential to her plan. I mean, the servants don't really have any power over her future or anything.
But she's still, over the top nice to them.
Yeah, like she takes an interest in Mrs. Blenkinsop's jam making.
Hmm.
And she calls Sambo sir and Mr. Sambo, and even apologizes to the lady's maid for ringing the bell.
Okay, so is she just a really nice person, or is there something else going on?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, it could be that she's genuinely kind, but it's also a very smart move strategically, because by being nice to the servants, she's basically guaranteeing that they'll speak well of her.
So she's creating a positive image for herself within the entire household.
Right. And, word travels fast in a house like that.
Yeah,
So if the servants are saying nice things about her, that's only going to help her cause.
makes sense. And then there's this really interesting scene with the drawing that Amelia did at school.
Oh, yeah. The drawing incident. This one's a real head scratcher.
So what happens?
Rebecca sees this drawing and she just bursts into tears and runs out of the room, leaving everyone wondering what's going on. And it turns out later that the drawing reminded her of her father, who was their drawing master at school, but his role was always downplayed.
Like he wasn't given credit for his work.
Right, Miss Pinkerton, the headmistress, would always say he only mounted the drawings.
Hmm.
But Amelia remembers that he actually did a lot more than that.
And Rebecca's reaction is like this delayed grief or something.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it comes out of nowhere and it's so intense. And of course, Mrs. Sedley sees it as this sign of her, tender heart. And she says, the poor child is all heart.
Which plays right into Rebecca's hands.
Totally, because it reinforces this image of her as this vulnerable, sensitive soul. And you have to wonder, is this a genuine emotional response? Or is there a part of her that's aware of how this is going to affect the people around her?
Especially since Joe has just made his reappearance, after avoiding her for a few days.
The timing is definitely suspicious, right? It's like she knows how to create a dramatic moment and she's using her emotions to manipulate the situation.
But even if she is being manipulative, it still works.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it makes her seem even more sympathetic and appealing, and it sets the stage for that direct interaction between her and Joe after he's been away.
Because now he's back in the game.
Right. And she wastes no time in addressing him directly. She says this line, all except you, Mr. Joseph. And it's just dripping with meaning.
Like a subtle accusation.
Yeah, like she's calling him out for his absence and making him feel a little bit guilty.
And how does Joe react to that?
Well, he stumbles all over himself. He's like, gracious heavens, good gad, Miss Sharp, all flustered and awkward.
Which is exactly what she wanted.
I think so. It puts him on the defensive and it gives her the upper hand in the conversation.
And then she brings up the pepper dish.
Oh, yeah, the infamous pepper dish.
This is from their first encounter, right?
Yeah, she basically accuses him of being unkind by serving her this super spicy dish that she couldn't handle.
Like he was inconsiderate.
Right. And she even contrasts him with Amelia, saying how sweet and thoughtful Amelia is.
So she's playing the victim a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. But it's also a way of, subtly flirting with him because she's bringing up a shared experience, even if it wasn't a positive one.
Creating a connection.
Exactly. And it gets both Amelia and Mrs. Sedley on her side because they both jump in to defend her and say, oh, Joe, you should have known better.
So it's like a 3-against-1 situation.
Pretty much. And poor Joe is just trying to explain himself. He starts talking about the curry and how much he loves it. And he even starts laughing about how Rebecca reacted to the spice, which probably wasn't the best move.
Yeah, rubbing salt in the wound.
Right. But it shows that he's not really getting it. He's not picking up on the social cues. And he's definitely not as smooth as Rebecca.
So then Rebecca decides to lay down the law a little bit.
Yeah, she kind of draws a line in the sand. She tells him that she'll be more careful about letting him choose for her again. And then she makes this dramatic statement about how men always cause pain to harmless girls.
Oh, she's playing the damsel in distress card.
It's a classic movie. Of course, Joe falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. He's all like, by gad, Miss Rebecca, I wouldn't hurt you for the world.
He's protesting too much.
Yeah. But it shows her that he cares what she thinks and that he's willing to, bend over backwards to please her.
And then comes the hand touch.
Oh, yeah. That's a big moment. The narrator even makes a point of saying that Joe's heart starts thumping.
So what happens exactly?
Rebecca just very lightly touches his hand for a brief second and then pulls away and looks at him and then down at the carpet rods.
So it's quick but loaded with meaning.
Definitely. It introduces this element of physical intimacy into their relationship, and it's completely on her terms because she initiates it and then breaks contact.
Leaving Joe wanting more.
I think so. And it's such a clever move because it leaves him guessing. Was that a sign of affection? Was she just being playful? What did it mean?
So she's creating this sense of mystery and intrigue around herself.
Exactly. And I think that's one of her biggest strengths. She keeps people guessing, and she always seems to be one step ahead.
So wrapping up, what are some of the key takeaways from this excerpt about Rebecca's approach to courtship and Joe's responses?
Well, I think it's clear that Rebecca is playing a very calculated game. She's not just flirting, she's using every tool at her disposal to win Joe over. And she's doing it with this amazing combination of charm, wit, and emotional manipulation.
And Joe is pretty much putty in her hands.
Yeah, he's definitely smitten with her, but he's also very naive and easily influenced by the opinions of his family, especially Amelia.
It's like he's not really thinking for himself.
Not entirely, and that makes him very vulnerable to Rebecca's charms.
So what are some questions we can leave our listeners with to ponder, after they finish this deep dive?
Well, I think a big one is about Rebecca's motives. Do you think she genuinely cares for Joe, or is she just using him to advance her social standing?
That's a good one. And what about that whole drawing incident? Do you think her tears were real or was that just a performance?
And how much of a role does Amelia play in all of this? I mean, she's clearly very fond of Rebecca, and that must have some influence on Joe.
Right, it's like a social pressure situation.
And then there's the hand touch that's the big cliffhanger. Was it a moment of genuine connection or just a strategic move on Rebecca's part?
So many questions.
So many layers to unpack, and I think that's what makes these early interactions so fascinating. They really give you a glimpse into the complexities of human relationships and how people navigate those early stages of attraction and courtship.
And even though this story's set in the 19th century, you can see how those same dynamics still play out today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about all the ways we present ourselves on social media and how we try to create a certain image and, use different strategies to attract potential partners.
It's all about playing the game.
Right. And Rebecca Sharp, she's the ultimate player. She's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
So maybe there's a lesson to be learned from her, whether you agree with her methods or not.
Definitely. She's a master class in social strategy. And even if you don't want to be as manipulative as she is, there's still something to be said for, being aware of how you present yourself and how your actions affect other people.
So be mindful. Be strategic.
And maybe don't serve anyone a super spicy curry on a first date.
Some good advice to take away from Vanity Fair.
You never know what you might learn from a classic novel.
Exactly. Thanks for another great deep dive.
It is my pleasure. Until next time.
Keep those pages turning.